All right, so this guy, Arthur Kwon Lee, made a video titled,
Men are the beautiful gender, not women. If you can step back and look from a bird's eye view here, you'll see that males, not females, are the beautiful gender in every animal species on the planet.
and this has been like a very popular quote that's been circulating over the last year or so, and it doesn't exactly revolve around what it says. It's not, the conversation really isn't about, who's objectively more beautiful. It's a bit more deep than that, because what it really is insinuating, what he's trying to insinuate and what he's articulating in the video as well, which I'll show you, he's trying to argue that men are the more valuable gender. Men are the prize.
When both men and women are biochemically sound and healthy, the man is actually the prize and worship the beauty object at hand.
And I'm going to show you today, I'm going to explain to you today why this isn't true. It's going to make perfect sense to you, I promise. But it's not that simple either. And this is what I don't think anyone seems to be talking about. Again, like, for some reason, like, nobody seems to come to these conclusions, but it's so simple, and you're going to understand it. And it all revolves around hypergamy and there being a threshold where there's a switch. Does that make sense? Okay, so before we get into that, I just want to give you an idea of what his sentiment is so you understand, and I don't mischaracterize anything. So listen.
And if you know this truth, you can use it to your advantage. When both men and women are biochemically sound and healthy, the man is actually the prize and worship the beauty object at hand. The males are always taller, bigger bones, thick.
So what he's saying is actually kind of related to the conclusion I'm gonna guide you to, but he's talking about it like nutrition and the environmental factors are what matter here. And this is just an example of like a regular guy who's not really that deep into the black pill sphere. He's got some knowledge. He does come to a decent conclusion at the end of the video where he says, most good relationships are when the guy is a couple notch higher than the female. So, like, I don't entirely disagree with everything he says. He's got some good surface level knowledge, but, he's on the raw milk kind of wave and thinking that, like, nutrition is going to be, pivotal in your, like, bone development when it's all genetics. It's all genetics. These environmental factors, like choosing raw milk over regular milk, avoiding seed oils, and all this shit. Even if you were in a fucking famine, even if you were fucking famined, it's not gonna change as much as you would think. And none of us are in a fucking famine. So, but I don't wanna mischaracterize anything he's saying. So I'm gonna show you like a little bit more of what he's saying, like, so you could get an idea of where this guy kind of sits. A very, very like normal guy who's like getting his feet wet in the black pill, one of those gray pillars. He understands the importance of looks and genetics to a degree, but he still seems to think that there's like more in your control and environment matters. He's not deep into it. So listen.
Thicker hair and more protruding bone structure in the face. The word for all of this is dimorphism. Dimorphism is a secret to attraction and dominating your social landscape. And it is true today that the vast majority of men don't have dimorphism. And this is solely because of the Illuminati strategy to neuter us with vaccines, pharmaceutical drugs,
No,
the medical
it's
industry,
genetics.
and prescribing
It's
us
genetics.
with an entirely grain
Like,
base and
we could have a whole conversation about the vaccine shit and all, and how there is something going on there, but it's a different conversation. That's not involved in this conversation, okay? It's genetics, okay? It's fucking genetics, man.
carcinogenic seed oil-based diet, of course. And on top of that, we have all these theories you see out in the world today, especially in the manosphere, about hypergamy, loser passport broing, and the political talk of revolution.
Okay, so like this is another thing that he's like, just like throwing words together. Geomaxing and like the revolution idea, yes, copes. These are copes. Get involved into politics and a strategic strategy of changing countries. Yes, those are forms of coping. Believing in hypergamy, that's not a cope. That's just like an actual fact. And you could see this in other species, which is his entire like talking point in this video. He's relating to other species. He's showing how birds, for example, have like the more beautiful feathers in the male species. And so he's using other species to prove the point that, you know, hypergamy, I mean, that males are the more beautiful gender, which I'm going to show you like why that happens. And it's going to completely flip the script, you know. It's actually going to be like using his exact point against him, because you got to think critically about all these things. You know, you can't just look at everything on the surface and just say, "Oh yeah, that's it. That makes sense." You have to think critically about things. So like when you see a duck is more beautiful, like more colorful and all in the male gender than the regular brown female, like okay, you could argue that maybe we'll give it to him, like there's more objective beauty in that, like more colorful, more aesthetic. The birds in the like other species of birds have longer tails. But remember, he's stating that because he's trying to insinuate that males are the more valuable species when this is not exactly true. And for the most part, it's not true because you have to look at this critically. You have to analyze, why is this the case? You can't just take it on the surface. You have to think critically. Why is it that males in so many species ended up becoming the beautiful ones? And we're gonna dive into that in a little bit. Okay, I'm gonna explain why you need to think critically about that. But first, let's just continue a little bit so we understand where he's coming from.
These are
Okay.
all just varying forms of genetically inferior men coping with the reality that I'm going to break down further here right now.
It's funny, like he says like genetically inferior men coping, like it's like he half agrees with the genetic importance, half doesn't, and then he goes on to talk about like you'll see
happening. When a country does not have enough resources and bioavailable nutrients in their food supply, the women are less likely to give birth to alpha males, to genetically superior men.
No, do you know how inheritance works? Holy shit. Like, holy shit. It's so funny when people talk with like this confidence when they say phrases like, I'll show you what's actually happening. And he's got in his description something like, I'm the most banned man on the internet. And so many like midwits will just like take that and run with it and be like, yeah, this guy knows what he's talking about. But do you understand inheritance? Do you understand, like, this is basic science? Dude, it's not because of a lack of resources. It's because of your fucking parents. Your inheritance.
Men, those boys, take a lot more energy and resources to produce. For those men, their bones are destined to be thicker and wider. When properly nourished, men are always the superior kin. As uncomfortable it is to say that.
He has raw milk on the screen. Oh my god.
Wider. When properly nourished, men are always the superior kin. As uncomfortable it is to say that, when men are at their apex form due to proper nutrition from infancy and beyond, they are clearly the successors of all these females. It is the males that are the hunters. It is the males that are the leaders. It is the males that are the protectors. And it is the males that acquire resources for their community and establish tribal rules of exchange. And it is the males that are the iconic figures or arbiters of beauty as well, with endless heroic due to proper nutrition from infancy and beyond. They are clearly the successors of all these females. It is the males.
So like this, I'm just showing you this to like show I don't want to say discredit him, but just to like give you an idea of his mindset. And it's okay. Like, it's completely normal that he thinks this. This is like general consensus. Like, he's still in the cave because most people haven't accepted that there's just so much beyond your control. Genetics are not really something that is going to be saved by raw milk, you know? Even in something as drastically environmentally different as a famine and severe caloric deficits, you would be surprised to see that the facial structure really isn't going to change. It really isn't. You know, if it's a severe caloric deficit for the youth, sure, you know, height could be impacted by that. Overall development's going to be impacted, yes. But even to a degree, then like genetics are still controlling most of it. But there is going to be some variance then, yes. And like Robert Plowman, in his book Blueprint does address this too, and how height isn't 100% heritable. I think he says something like height is maybe 90% heritable. And don't let that confuse you. It's a very nuanced thing. I don't think we have time to talk about it, but don't think that 10% is like full changeability. It's not. It's more like that small amount of. It's too much to go into now, but let's try to stay focused on this. The point is, this guy, that's his like point of view, And it's not to discredit him. It's just so you see, this is like the average guy, like the average guy who believes the average things on Twitter. This is like general consensus. He thinks he's like saying like revolutionary things, but believe it or not, this is like what most people think. Like a lot of guys think that men are the more valuable gender. And it's because guys like him will make statements like men are the more beautiful gender. But now we come back to the primary point of, well, your overall conclusion that you're trying to draw here, what you're trying to insinuate, and we saw he did state it earlier in the video after showing the examples of the birds and all, what he's trying to prove is that men are the prize. That's the big argument. That's the core argument here. The title is Men Are the More Beautiful Gender, not women, but what he's trying to insinuate is that men are the prize. Men are more valuable as a species overall, and that like you need to see yourself as more valuable and all, which you should see yourself as more valuable, and we're going to get into the nuance of that a little bit later. Because remember, there's always nuance in these things. But to understand who is the more beautiful gender, the more valuable gender, all you need is to look at hypergamy, and hypergamy exists in all species, almost all species, not all species, but you could look at other species where even it isn't female choice. So humans, for example, we have female concealed ovulation, so the females are choosing. Just like in some birds where we see those colorful feathers come up, that's where we see concealed ovulation as well. But he says in all species, females are more beautiful. This isn't true. It's only true where there is concealed ovulation and the female is choosing. It's not true when it's males just fighting for the females. And that is not the human species. It's not those particular birds with the colorful feathers. Something like elephant seals, for example. Hypergamy still exists with elephant seals, but it's not through concealed ovulation. It's not through female selection. It's through a different process. That process is just the male dominance, males fighting each other. And he doesn't seem to understand the difference here and the nuance with this. But there still exists hypergamy, even in those. And there is a way to identify which gender, who is the more valuable ones in those species, just like concealed ovulation species. And in either one of those, because they're very different, it all comes down to hypergamy. And there's a certain threshold in hypergamy where it switches. And it's really only towards that top percentile, and it all revolves around who's competing for who. There comes a point in hypergamy where the genders flip, and suddenly, like you see, for the overwhelming majority of men, the overwhelming majority of men, human men, and also in other species, they're competing for women. Like, just look at the statistics on Tinder or whatever. They're competing for women. But when you get to that upper percentile, like the top, few percentages of men, it's the switch flips. That's when the women start competing for the men. And this could be for a multitude of reasons. In the overwhelming majority of species, it's primarily just genetics, like their overall genetic fitness. And this is with female selection in those species, it mostly has to do with the sexy son hypothesis. A lot of these guys, and I even saw Aesthetics Waiting video on this, he talks a lot about how like survival advantages and hunting advantages are what create that sexual desire. And like that's true with some things. Yes, there's definitely a lot of truth in that. But it also is true that some things are just naturally beautiful. Like that's it. And this doesn't seem logical. Most men can't comprehend this. It's like incomprehensible to them. Like, how could it just be beautiful? And that's the sexy sun hypothesis. I didn't come up with this, guys. This is science. But the sexy sun hypothesis is just that females find things attractive because they just do. They just fancy them. They find them attractive, and they know that if they subconsciously, it's just in their behavior, this is what was hardwired to work, just using the word know, they know that if they mate with that attractive man, the offspring is going to inherit the attractive genes as well and leave more offspring, who are also going to be successful in leaving more offspring. And that's the overall, I don't want to say goal, but that's just pragmatically what has worked in evolution. There's no like goal really, but that's just pragmatically what has happened to allow us to continue, and that's why it is what it is. Anyway, I'm going to try to like reel all this in together, okay? So, there's like tangents and all, fuck. The point is, there's a point in hypergamy where it switches. And it mostly revolves around genetics. But some resources could be involved too, like it's alpha and beta. Even in other species like birds, you see how males will like build certain nests, you know, and the female is impressed by this. The female likes the nest. That's where the beta side comes in too. So resource gathering potential is part of it, yes, but for the most part, it is genetics. And in humans, for many, many years, yes, like genetics have always had importance, but resources had a little bit more importance than it does now. Now, resource gathering in Western countries doesn't have much value because females can provide resources for themselves very well now. Females have the opportunity to go get education and go work, and so now they're just strictly prioritizing genetics. So it doesn't really matter. Like, this isn't the primary point here. I just wanted to clarify that. But the point to understand is that whether it's deriving from genetics or resources, because some women, like in third world countries, will prioritize resources more. Some most in Western countries prioritize genetics more. Overall, it comes together for a value. We all know this, surface level knowledge. And whatever man can get to the point of hypergamy where the value is exceedingly very, very high, that's where the switch flips. And then suddenly all the females are competing for that male. And that's where the male becomes more valuable. So now let's tie this in to, well, why are men the more beautiful in so many species? And we're not gonna try to argue if that's the case in humans or not. Humans are a species where there's concealed ovulation, and so the females are selecting. So technically, like he probably is right that men are objectively the beautiful species. I mean, it's besides the point. It doesn't matter. In many, many species where there is concealed ovulation, you do see that this is pretty hard to argue. Like you see the lions, you know, they look like way more beautiful. You look at the birds with the colorful feathers. But remember what I said when I started the video. Why? Why? Why is it that they're more beautiful? And it relates to what he was talking about, dimorphism. There's certain traits that only men and males in other species are going to have the ability to represent. What's the right word for it when like genes are represented? I can't think of it. Someone in the comments will say it. But in a female species, like a female isn't gonna just grow a penis. You know, she's not gonna grow a phallus. Just like there's certain facial traits and like small little things that are only gonna develop in the males. So whether, you know, the female and the male mate and they have an offspring, whether it's a female or a male, even if the male she mated with was very beautiful, like that female isn't gonna get those things. But the male will. The male will get those things. And the reason why they keep getting more and more beautiful is because of concealed ovulation because the female is choosing. The female is choosing the males, and they're going to be choosing the ones that are more beautiful, the ones that, again, the sexy sun hypothesis, they're picking the ones that are the most attractive because it is the males that are competing. The males are competing so that, and the reason this has to be the case is because the female is innately already more valuable. That's why the males have to compete. This is why males are evolving to become like more and more genetically fit or genetically beautiful. And the females are too, but we're just seeing certain genes only represented in the males. But like if you had done a flip, like let's say that bird with the huge feathers that came out male, if you flipped their, like if they instead turned out to be a female, that female would still carry those genes to where when she had a male, that grandson would have those beautiful feathers as well. It would be carrying those genes, even though it isn't represented in her. She's still carrying those genes, but it's just only represented in the male species. And the male needed this in evolution. This is what worked in evolution. They didn't need it, but this is what worked in evolution because it all comes down to the female is the one choosing, and the female in concealed ovulation is also very, very selective. And it all comes down to the fact that the female is innately more valuable. The female has innately more valuable. If we're just putting them both on like the same plane, like they have the same equal genetics, same whatever, the female, just the fact that she is a female, she has more value. And it comes down to understanding sperms and eggs. Sperm are not rare. There is an abundance of sperm. Eggs are rare. And this is precisely why females are more selective. They're not just going to have sex as frequently as the male who just wants to spread maximum seed. And at the same time, they also know that pregnancy requires resource investment. She doesn't want to get abandoned. I mean, not in all cases, but for the most part. And that's why another reason why she tries to be selective. So for one, like the eggs are significantly more rare. And for two, there's resources required for the pregnancy. And again, it's not like she knows this. Like the female in every species isn't like thinking about this. Don't get it twisted. This is just what worked in evolution. It just happens because this is what's working. There's no like thinking or logic behind it. It just is because it is. This is something that like a lot of like regular people just can't fucking comprehend, and they think that there's like morals and immorals in evolution, and there's not. It just is. It's pragmatic. That's it. But the point is, the female is innately more valuable, and the male, like the overwhelming majority of males in almost all species, are competing for those females. And because they're the ones competing, like in any demand model you look at, even in business or whatever, whoever's competing for who, that just says it all. Like if you're competing for something, that's the prize. That's the prize. But once you get to that upper percentile in hypergamy, and we see only 50% of men on average have passed down their DNA compared to 90% of women, this also represents it. This also shows this truth, where there is that flip, because the men or the males in other species at the very top, regardless of if it's female selection, concealed ovulation, or if it's dominant males fighting, it's the same idea that the ones at the top, although in different ways, the ones at the top are the ones who are the prize. That's where it flips, because either in concealed ovulation, the females are competing for those top men. You'll see like harems, right? You know, like in not just humans, but in other species too, like one male is impregnating many, many females. that's when it flips. That's when that male is going to be more valuable than females. And this is the nuance in it. It's like, it's not a black and white thing, but it's a very simple and easy thing to understand once you accept hypergamy, and that hypergamy isn't a fucking cope that you can associate with calling it the same, classifying it as a cope like Geomax and revolutions like this guy's doing. I don't know what the fuck he's doing. But yeah, hypergamy is a very real thing, both in concealed ovulation and where the dominant males fight. And the different way males are valuable in the other species is when they're like fighting each other. It's as simple as understanding that the males who are the most dominant and most able and genetically fit to fight off 95% of the other males are overall net more valuable genetically, and the rest of them get eradicated from the gene pool. So like elephant seals, for example, only like 5% of the males end up reproducing with like almost all the females. So the majority of the females are more valuable than 95% of those elephant seals. And this isn't a species with concealed ovulation, but the same concept applies just in a different way to species like humans, where humans operate with females operate in concealed ovulation and females are the ones who are doing the selecting. And so the men at the top of the hierarchy in society are more valuable than females. And this doesn't just have to do with genetics. This could also have to do with resource gathering potential. So like somebody like Elon Musk, for example, big outlier obviously, but somebody like Elon Musk, while his genetic fitness is not ideal, like, you know, he went bald, he got a hair transplant, overall maybe the guy's like a 5 or like a 4.5, you know, in his prime. Nah, I'm not going to say that. SMV considered, you know, with his height and all, it's besides the point. Overall, you know, it's mostly going to be his resources that's carrying him to that upper percentile, the fact that he's a billionaire. So resources could do it too. So this means to say you do have the ability to be one of these prizes. If you're not genetically well off, like if you're not at least like a 6 or above, you're going to need to do a lot to be one of those men. And the way you're going to know if you've met that threshold with a combination of your genetics and resource gathering is when the women start competing for you and you're not competing for women. And of course, there's so much nuance in this, you know, like it's not a black and white thing, but you're going to be able to like tell. You could sort of see when there's like a guy in your friend group or some celebrity. You could see when women, for the most part, are competing for him and he's not competing for women. But then you look down at the overwhelming majority of men. Overwhelming majority of men, at least in the modern society, the modern day, where women are prioritizing genetics because they don't need resources. That's now where it's the majority of men are competing for women. Those men who are not upper percentile, they're competing for women, and thus they are not the prize. So yeah, this guy's video, it just kind of like got me going. I just had to yap about it because I saw Aesthetics Waiting made a reaction video to this, and he didn't really like disagree with as much as I thought he would disagree with, because this guy's like, I thought Aesthetics Waiting was more of a geneticist, but I don't know. I still got to watch more of his videos. I just recently watched his video on people without an inner monologue. I thought that was a good video, so kudos to you. I really enjoyed watching that one. You thought about some nuanced things that I often think about too, so it was nice to hear someone articulate them. But yeah, I kind of wish he challenged him a little bit more in this video. He did say, you know, there's some things he disagreed with, but for the most part, he was calling this guy based. and he was like agreeing with a lot of the stuff passively. And there's just so much that's off in here, and it mostly revolves around this guy's lack of understanding of evolution and genetics. So yeah, grinded my gears a little bit, had to discuss this. But yeah, whenever you see somebody talking about, if you see anybody put raw milk on the screen, you kind of just know what camp like they're mostly residing in. And it's the general consensus. Remember, guys, like very few people, I think, are aware of the truth about genetics and how much weight they truly hold.